Hello and welcome to another episode of Off the Ruck, your weekly rugby breakdown with me, John Ferguson. Well, it was not to be for the Wallabies in Sydney at a sold-out Allianz Stadium in front of more than 41,000 fans. The Argentinians really were able to learn from their lessons the week before, and the Wallabies not so much. This is your match review, and don't forget, if you like the content, please like and subscribe in the button somewhere down in the bottom here. The first thing we have to say is that yes, Argentina did learn their lessons and they were really, really purposeful about implementing the lessons implementing the learning from those lessons. It was so hard to watch the Wallabies upon time get beaten in the aerial game, as well as really getting beaten in and around the ruck. I think that's the first thing that I noticed was that although the Argentinians could shift the ball quite wide very quickly, it became very evident that they were going direct at the tacklers getting up off the ground. There were players standing in channels in and around the ruck to be able to create that confusion. And the Argentinians kept hammering the 10s and the 20s. And that was something that the Wallabies probably weren't expecting after having a relatively more passive defense than the Springboks do, or even the Argentinians themselves. Not passive in a bad way, just they don't get off the line as quickly, and that allows sides to think they can go out wide. But instead of taking that bait, the Argentinians just went direct, direct, direct. They milked penalties for offside for players like Harry Wilson and Billy Pollard and so on. But they were able to chew up meterage there because they got quick recycle. Their clean ball that they got from their own rucks, being able to clear the rucks so quickly, is really what gave them that front foot. So when it was between winning the aerial game every single time, almost exactly, and also being able to go at the ruck, go at the ruck, go at the ruck, it just became evident so quickly that the Wallabies were not able to adapt fully to be able to deal with that. And that also meant that players were having to make a lot more tackles in a situation where they couldn't get around and pilfer the ball like they have been so successful at doing against the Springboks in the prior two games. And even players like Fraser McWright making heaps of tackles, but really just couldn't get himself involved in the game because of the speed of this ruck. But I think that this really has to go down to players like Iskro on the wing being able to get up and compete. But it was also the Wallabies players who were just not catching the ball. Corey Toole in the contest almost every single time, but never once did he actually look like he was going to catch the ball. And likewise on the other side, Max Jorgensen, he looked like he was trying to catch the ball, but he just got outleapt. And so it was a really, really impressive shift from players like Santiago Carreras on one wing and Iskro on the other. And I think that also translated into a safe zone for the Argentinians to go to, because it wasn't just platter ball. The Argentinians were statistically making the ball back, getting back possession in a better situation, territorially more sound position than when they let go of the ball and they hoisted those box kicks. I'm extremely impressed, and I said this in the preview, I said it after last week. Santiago Garcia, the number 9 for the Argentinians, just extremely astute, smart player, confrontational for a guy quite small in stature, and he just put these Wallabies forwards to the sword from his quick recycle and also his ability to dart in and around the breakdown. I think I was really impressed with how Santiago Carreras managed his team. He didn't call for the ball too much. He didn't go too wide. And Julian Montoya led from the front with that charge down try that really put the screws on Tane Edmed early. It's not exactly how you want to go in your maiden start. But on that saying that, I thought that Edmed had a pretty decent game. Now, let's turn to the Wallabies, because there are two teams in this game, as there is with every game, but there really was two sides of this coin. So while the Argentinians were getting great forward ball, they were really putting the screws on the Wallabies. The Wallabies were buckling and they were really struggling with that pressure. So much so that they conceded way too many penalties. And if I get this up here for myself, just so I can see what we were dealing with, because the stats were grim. I'll whip them up here as well so you guys can see them in real time. So you guys get to know what I'm looking at. But penalties, 14 penalties conceded to the Argentinians 7. 7 penalties is almost what the Wallabies conceded in 2 matches against the Springboks in South Africa. And so this turn now, two games with 10 or more penalties, is just a complete reversal of a lot of the progress that the Wallabies have made under Joe Schmidt. They were so disciplined during the Lion series. They were disciplined against Fiji, relatively speaking, and also in South Africa. And now these two tests, they've just proven that they've struggled a little bit to be able to deal with different referees' interpretations. And on the fly, they really haven't been able to fix them. And that is a big worry heading into Eden Park into the next game for the Wallabies in 2 weeks' time. I'm sorry, but um, you've also got the yellow card to Max Jorgensen. That was completely fair and consistent as the referee was, as he gave one to Santiago Carreras, Argentina's number 10, only in the second half, much later. So it was really clear that that was something that the referee was not about, and he didn't let it play for either team. The slapdown was penalised. Although what I will say, and I'm not saying that the Wallabies, this game was decided by the Wallabies not getting the rub of the green from the referee, but it did feel that a lot of the offsides were from players, Wallabies players in and around the ruck, and there were reserve number 9 for Argentina and Garcia running into them, passing into them, really using them and milking penalties. Whereas when the Argentinians were standing in the Wallabies passing lane, it was never seen the same way. And that lack of consistency frustrated Harry Wilson, the captain for the Wallabies, immensely. And he did try to bring it to the attention to the referee, Christoph Ridley of England, several times, but he never saw eye to eye with Wilson in that contest rather, sorry. So that was quite frustrating for him and the team, I guess, to be able to think that they've now worked themselves into a position where they're attacking those players in the Argentinian line that are being lazy, and they'd be able to milk a penalty out of that, but they just never got those penalties blown. And that obviously meant a lot from the sense of tactical thinking, because they've gone there trying to milk a penalty, trying to make meterage, and instead they've kind of worked themselves into a bit of a corner, because that's not intentionally or potentially where they wanted to go. In actual fact, there was more space on the open side or wherever it was on the opposite side, but they were really trying to work that and bring that to the attention of Christoph Ridley. But it just goes to show that you can't depend on the referee. Play your game and you should be rewarded. And on this penalty count, that is the end all or be all of this game. The Wallabies scored three tries to the Argentinians one. Uh, and you just got to see that in the end, 26, 28, 28, 26 to the Argentinians. The only difference in scoreline there are the threes that Santiago Carreras was getting from kicking the ball over from penalties. You can't give this Argentinian side any penalties in your half, because whether it's Tomas Albanos, who's currently injured, Santiago Carreras, or Emilian Buffelli, who kicks occasionally as well, who's a winger and fullback, they are too accurate. 9 out of 8 kicks, I believe, 8 out of 9 kicks is, I believe, what they kicked. And it's just, the points are there. You can see it for yourselves. This is how you play test match rugby, particularly when you've got such a short kickers. And it becomes so hard for the Wallabies to truly be in the contest if they have to make such a late charge off the back of 14 penalties and try to score tries at the very end. And now I want to get to that. Why do they have to chase the game? Why are they always, not always, but why have they had generally slower starts than fast finishes, which we've seen over the last three? I'm not saying that this is a pattern, and it's easy to be able to get into saying that the Wallabies start slow and they finish fast, and et cetera, et cetera. There isn't necessarily the strongest correlation there, but what I think what is happening is that they often start early and they try to play themselves into a position to be able to do something because they have the time and there's no scoreboard pressure. Whereas in the second halves, they tend to go more conservative because they are behind and play the territory. And then when they get a little bit of territory, so I'm not talking about deep in the 22, I'm talking about in the opposition's half, then they chance their arm. The likes of James O'Connor and Max Jorgensen, be able to unleash him. He's not necessarily scoring from their own 22. They're scoring from around the halfway meter mark where they get those opportunities, because we've got such great attacking weapons, but also as well when we're working ourselves into our 50 and further on into the 22. Next, the Wallabies cannot hope to win any sort of territorial advantage if they can't go to a contestable kick and get any of those balls back. And that's what we saw several times for this Wallabies side. It was so frustrating to watch time and time again Nick White, Tate McDermott hoisting these box kicks and us getting no pay of them. And actually, quite the opposite, quite a reverse, because we were getting done for knock-ons, and that gives the Argentinians 1 or 2 phases where they can attack. That is free ball. That is house money that they're playing with there in those opportunities when they can attack. And if they get something out of it, then they've just given themselves a huge territorial and possession advantage. And if not, it just goes back to a scrum where they were doing really well as well. So both those things from the kicks were just not working, and we didn't adjust. And then if you go and look at who the players who truly stood up, I would have to say that again, James O'Connell was really, really strong off the bench. And I'm really impressed with how he's been playing. And it is still up in the air whether he will stay for the Bledisloe, because earlier this week it was reported that he will be indeed going to Leicester. He's a new club in the UK in the English Premiership. With the assistant of the Wallabies, Jeff Parling, now being the head coach there. Hopefully, Joe Schmidt's relationship with Jeff Parling will give James O'Connor the grace that's needed to be able to play to stick it around in Australia for the next 3 weeks, but play these next 2 games against the All Blacks, one in Eden Park and one in Perth at Optus Stadium. I think what's also really important to highlight is the impact the likes of Angus Bell, Carlo Tizzano, Lukan Salakai Loto brought in, as well as Josh Nasser. I thought that these guys were absolutely phenomenal off the bench. But in the starting side, I really, really want to commend, yes, Hunter Paisami. Hunter Paisami was probably our best back alongside Joseph Akuso Suwali'i. And the stats are as follows, because they are absolutely tremendous. Sorry, I'm searching this up on my phone because I have made a comment about it on X. So Paisami hasn't played since the 2nd of July. That's more than 2 months' time. And yet he had a higher tackle percentage than Joseph Akuso Suwali'i. Suwali'i made 6 tackles, missed 2. And Hunter Paisami made 12 tackles, I believe, and missed 1. That is an incredibly high difference. He also made dominant tackles, which were great. He beat more defenders than Suwali'i. He beat the most defenders of any Australian player, I believe. And he also made roughly the same run meters. I think there's about an 8 or 9 meter difference between the two. So he's defending better. He's breaking more tackles, and perhaps I get a little bit of a clip here showing you guys, but if not, you just have to go back and watch it. The best passage of the Wallabies play was around the 29-meter minute, I believe. Let me have a look at my notes. Yes. So leading up until the 29th minute, go back and watch this. They defend like absolute rabid dogs on their own line. The Argentinians make a break from around the 50-meter mark. They get all the way down to the try line. And in the end, Santiago Carreras knocks it on, and the Wallabies get a scrum. It is a tremendous piece of scrambling line defense. And I think what this also highlights is that the Wallabies made 10 line breaks to 2. Almost all the stats, I'll whip them up here. They were in the favor of the Wallabies, except for those crucial penalties. And that is just goes to show that stats are not everything in a game, but in a game where you score more tries and then in conversely you don't get the chocolates at the end, it really goes to show how important penalty count is to dictate who wins and who loses. Not being all end all, but very, very indicative of a strong performance and a high likelihood of winning. But as I was saying, 29th minute, after that, we get a scrum. Hunter Paisami runs over the top of his opposite number, breaks, rolls, breaks another tackle, and then offloads to Fraser McReight, who gets up to around the 40. This is really important because he made 2 dud offloads, which were really poor. They were both in the Argentinians' half, I believe. Now, this one was in his own half, and he got an extra 5 meters, 4 meters out of it with McWright. And then we go out to the right after a quick recycle because we're on the front foot ball. And because Malia is so alone in midfield, and Mateo Carreras and Rodrigo the 2 of the defenders who are made back in time have to hang high and cannot drop back. And what does Tane Emmett do? He managed to slot a 50-22. That is a 80-meter change in position in the field. Huge 80% territory gain. And that was the best that the Wallabies looked when they were able to play with front foot ball and they really got over the game line. And that is something I think was lacking from the starting pack. I was a little bit concerned that Jeremy Williams was starting next to Tom Hooper in the second row because that is a 2-meter both are sub 2 meters second rowers, and they both lack that big presence or punch that a Nick Frost has due to his height because he's 204 centimeters, or Lukan Salakaia-Loto or Will Skelton, who are both heavier than both of those players and taller. So it was quite evident that although Valentini was having an absolute stellar game, and the likes of James Slipper, Jesus, he was absolutely magic, putting on steps in the 15th minute, taking a mark, chasing back and taking a mark from a chip kick in the 32nd minute. Absolute vintage performance from the 35-year-old. He goes to 150 tests. He is an absolute magician at being able to stay in the game, and I'm so happy that he is sticking around for the minute. But it was just really frustrating to see that we weren't getting enough from football. There were some good interplays. There was Harry Wilson getting put through a couple of gaps, and there was Tom Hooper really putting in the work. But I think that they just needed a bulkier player in and around that pack, like a Lukan Salakaia-Loto, to start and to really be able to implement himself in the game. Because when he did come on, he was definitely very physical, making 10 tackles in the 30-25 minutes that he played, and he really managed to carry well and attract a lot of defenders. He was also quite good in the rucking area, and he didn't concede any penalties. So that is a huge benefit there, which is something that he's really had to work on. So I do really think that the Wallabies played well in pockets, but overall they really struggled with the referees' interpretations around offside and where they could stand or where they could get up from the ruck, and that just cost them in the end on the scoreboard as well as on the penalty count. I just want to highlight a couple of key players on the Argentinian side. Joaquin Oviedo, absolutely magical. Juan Montin Gonzalez, as elusive as ever in the 15-minute channels. He really is a super athlete. He's feline-esque. He's floats across the ground for such a large man. I thought that Pablo Matera was kept quite quiet, which was quite surprising. But I'd like to say Molina off the bench was extremely impressive, very, very physical, and gave it to the likes of Joseph Kuso-Suoli, who himself had a very good game. That first try was absolutely stellar. Had he reeled in one or two passes and perhaps not run backwards, he probably would have been man of the match because he was very, very good. And defensively, no lapses alongside Hunter Paisami. So that was very, very good. I'm very happy about that. And then also, I thought Iskro, that was a big difference maker. He and Mateo Carreras on the wings, winning those aerial battles, chasing everything, being really dogged. They're going to give South Africa a run for their money. And I think that I think I'm very, very happy that they're doing well because I want this to be a tight series right to the end. And that means the Wallabies competing at Eden Park and competing at Optus Stadium, as well as the South Africans and Argentinians competing when they go one apiece in each country, I believe it is. So that's my thoughts on the game. Please let me know yours. It's Sunday, Arvo. I've watched the game twice. I've had a proper look at it. And, I've whipped the stats up here as we go along. You will have seen them. But if you like the content, if you feel like you learned something or you want to chat about something, give the channel a little bit of support, show it a little bit of love, give me a like and a subscribe below, and I will be eternally grateful. But until then, until my next video, which will probably be out on Monday or Tuesday, which will be a review of the Springboks and South Africa, because we need to talk about that historic event. Just can't talk about it just today. We're talking about all the Wallabies and the Argentinians today. So until then, enjoy this video, share it with your mates, share it with those rugby lovers that you know, and I'll catch you on the next one. And the Wallabies, we will go again after a week of chat.